It is Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, and you are tuned into DIRTRACKR Daily. I'm Justin Fiedler. I'm doing a little experimentation on the show today. I'm doing my first interview, which I will talk about here shortly, but I have to do a couple of different things with my software, so if it sounds a little weird or there might be some weird video things, I will certainly work on those as we go forward. But a new week means another round of World of Outlaws Invitationals. Last night, it was the late models taking on the Williams Grove Speedway. Robbie Kendall went quick time over the 47 car field. He was quickest by nearly 2/10. Heats were won by Kendall, Logan Seavey, Michael Hensley, Eric Riggins, and Trent Ivey. B-mains were won by Chase Briscoe, Caden Cornell, and Dalton Polston. From the pole, Robbie Kendall led the first 5 laps. Trent Ivey ran him down from 5th and took the lead on lap 6. He would lead until lap 12 when Corey Gordon took over. Gordon was rolling the bottom really well, and from there he was never really challenged again for the lead. He took the $1,000 win over Eric Riggins, Logan Seavey, Tyler Clem, and Trent Ivey. Kyle Hardy was hard charger. He went 23rd to 8th. Tonight, the World of Outlaws sprint cars take their turn at Williams Grove on iRacing. You can watch that live on Dirt Vision at 7 p.m. Eastern as part of your Fast Pass. Also, last night was round 5 for the iRacing World of Outlaws Sprint Car World Championship. Alex Bergeron entered the night as points leader over Kendall Tucker. The series took on the Lima Land Motorsports Park. James Edens went quick time over last week's winner, Braden Eiler. The heats were frantic, really frantic, kind of thanks to the tight confines there at Lima Land. But Edens won the first heat, Eiler won the second, and Joel Berkeley and Sean Timmerman won heats 3 and 4. Cole Newhoffen grabbed his first transfer spot. He was in heat 2. This was going to be his first feature start of the season, so good for him. The first B was won by Tyler Ducharme with Vinny Sansone transferring, and the second B was won by Dylan Semmelman with Lewis Hewitt, the other transfer. The track was reset before the feature. I know that's been kind of a topic of discussion week to week. In the feature, it was all James Edens, though. He led all 35 laps en route to his second win of the season. He becomes the first driver with multiple wins on the year. David Heilemann tried to make it a race down the stretch. He was actually catching Edens with only a few laps to go, but there was a caution which kind of restacked everything, and then on the restart, Edens was able to hold him off. Heilemann was under challenge from Alex Bergeron there with the last couple of laps in that race, but at the end, it was Edens winning over Bergeron, Heilemann, Braden Eiler, and Dylan Hauser. Heading back to Lernerville next week for the next round of the championship, Bergeron still leads the points by 9 markers over James Edens. David Heilemann is 3rd, Braden Eiler is 4th, and Kendall Tucker is 5th. You can catch Week 6 next Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on iRacing.com/live. That is free to watch. So as I mentioned at the start and yesterday when I kind of talked about this, I'm going to start mixing in a few different interviews. The first of those I'm going to play today. When we kind of get back racing again, I would like us, I think we can all kind of, take a look at things a little bit differently and maybe use this as an opportunity to appreciate things a little bit more. I know I certainly will be doing that. But I want to, in this conversation, I think there's an opportunity to maybe learn some things. And I have certainly seen plenty of races in my life, and I know a lot of you have as well. But I think we can all, maybe watch a little better and understand a little better and things like that. So I talked to Blake Anderson. He's a good buddy of mine. He's he's somebody who's seen thousands of races kind of over the course of his career. He's been an announcer for a lot of different places. He's currently the announcer for the All-Stars, but he's also been an announcer for Knoxville and USAC. He's done a ton of pit reporting. He's got a really good, kind of trained eye, and he shares a lot about kind of what he watches for when he races. So just, a little bit of information if you're a newer fan, maybe this will kind of, give you a couple of tips on things you can watch out for. And then if you're an experienced fan, we talk about some stuff to kind of keep an eye on there as well. But you can take a listen to right now my conversation with Blake Anderson. Joining us on the phone, Blake Anderson, voice of the Ollie's Bargain Outlet All-Star Circuit of Champions. Is that something where when people introduce you that you're like mad if they don't mention the sponsor name?
Oh, I wouldn't say mad. It's nice when they say it, though. I mean, I guess, you think, I think you can attest to it, Justin. It's not easy to find sponsors this day and age and find companies willing to spend money. So I think more so they deserve to have their name said. I mean, they're spending a lot of money supporting our sport.
Yeah, I figured since you're kind of like half announcer, half marketing guy, maybe that would be something that would stick under your craw.
At times it does. I guess it's probably one of those things more so depending on the mood you catch me in. I'm not in a bad mood very often, though.
So when we kind of go back racing here, my kind of thought with this conversation is I want people to let this be an opportunity to maybe educate themselves a little better, maybe be a better race fan on the other side of this, and somebody like you who has seen so many races over the course of their career, like obviously you have a very educated eye, and so I'm curious, first of all, do you have any idea how many races you've seen in your life?
Oh man, thousands. I mean, I'll say I know summer 2009 and summer 2010 when I was in my first 2 years of college. My parents had moved, so I lived at college during the summer and just announced racing and worked at our family Ford dealership. I was getting to, I think I was over 120 races both those years. So I mean, it's got high, but I don't know. It's hard to put a number on that. I mean, growing up, we usually hit 25 to 40 races, depending on the weather. My dad and I, not a ton though. Central Iowa is nice because we never really had to go more than an hour to see a race on 3 or 4 nights a week.
And if people don't, obviously, right now people probably know you as the voice of the All Stars, but you've also been the voice of Knoxville. You've been, you've done stuff for USAC, and then obviously, the pit reporting and things like that for Dirt on Dirt and Dirt Vision. Is there anything major that I'm leaving out there?
No, I mean, I started my career at Boone Speedway on Saturday nights. That's where I grew up going to. That's where I started announcing when I was 15, and that's a big track back home. It's the home run IMCA Super Nationals, which is one of the biggest races in the entire country for dirt track racing that gets 800 cars. And that was kind of my Super Bowl growing up. I didn't miss the Super Nationals from 95 to 2012. My dad took me every year. So that was always kind of my favorite race growing up. And then I got to be a part of it for 4 years on the broadcast side of things. But outside of that, I mean, since 2009, that's when I got in at Knoxville, and I've pretty much been engrossed in sprint cars, for lack of a better term, since then.
When you watch a race, depending on what division it is, do you change, maybe your mindset or your thought process depending on what the division is, whether it's sprint cars, light models, modifieds, or do you watch all races the same?
Oh, I think with sprint cars, you have to watch just a little bit differently, just because of the fact that stuff happens so much quicker. Like with the late model or modified, you can kind of see a battle developing, and you don't really see a guy pass somebody and then check out to a straightaway within a lap or two. Where in a sprint car, you miss one slide job, and that could be your pass right there for the race. Where you have to watch with a little bit different mentality, but you can kind of watch the same. I try to keep a pretty broad scope when I'm announcing, and really try to watch a lot of the racetrack. I mean, obviously you can't see it all, so you miss things, but I usually at least try to monitor where the leaders are, regardless of what I'm talking about. If I'm talking about a battle for 10th, I try to at least keep an eye on scoring, on when the leader's passing the line, so I can at least check in with that and see I'm not missing a battle up front.
And then I guess that's the other question. The other big question is how do you keep an eye on, say, the battle for the lead, and then maybe if it's a heat race or something like that, maybe a battle for the transfer. Like, can you really have like one eye on one and one eye on the other?
It depends on the track, honestly. Like at the big tracks, it's a little bit harder, especially if you're a little lower. Like Knoxville, it's a little bit easier just because you're up there in the sky. You're kind of like in an eagle's nest up there because you're so removed from the racetrack. But if you're a little bit closer, it gets a little bit tougher. But me as an announcer, honestly, like if the leader is gone, I'd rather talk about the battle for third, fourth, or fifth of the transfer, because I feel like that has a bigger bearing on the entire night. I mean, one spot can change the entire plan of the night for a team. So I think timing and scoring is big on that, because you can look at it real quick and see, oh shoot, the leader's up by 1 second. And if that number starts to shrink, then I know, shoot, I need to start watching the guy in second right now if he's closing in on the leader, or man, I don't really need to worry about the leader until the white flag because he's gone.
And what do you do about, like, in a situation where maybe there's a crash or contact or something like that? Do you immediately kind of jump away from whatever you're focused on to what's happening over there?
Absolutely. I usually try to. I think as I've announced more, and really I've worked with our cameraman, Jeff Converse, this is our 6th year together. I really try to lead him to where I'm talking to, like give him indicators of what corner I'm in, just in case he misses it. But yeah, if there's a crash or there's contact, I'm going to be going to that, because I feel like that's kind of the story of the race at that point.
When you are, say you're going to give some advice to a fan, maybe going for the first time to a dirt track, what would you say is something to key in on, or maybe a couple of things to pay attention to as they, get into the stands and start watching at night?
That's a tough one, I guess. I try to sit by the start finish line and get there early. The earlier, the better, because most of the time, say it's earlier in the night, you're going to hear a guy like Johnny or myself kind of talk through the night of what's going to come up and what's going to happen through the night. Because I guess the way I look at it is you have to treat every night like it's someone's first night at the races, because odds are there's someone that hasn't been there very much. So whether it's a fan that's been to 1,000 races, you kind of have to cater more to the fan that's never been there or been there once, because that's the fan you're trying to keep, and you're trying to grow them into being that fan that's been there 1,000 times. But the earlier the night you can get there, the better, just because you've got a better chance of really understanding what's going to happen through the evening.
And then say, if you're talking to a fan that's going to a race for the first time and, maybe they don't know the drivers, is there like maybe some sort of idea or strategy for like who they should kind of lock into on to watch? I mean, is it just leaders and things like that until you kind of figure out who people are?
Yeah, I would say that, because, you can kind of figure out who's going to be good. I don't know. For me, I like to do a little bit of homework, I guess, watch some highlights and kind of figure out, and that's how kind of figure out who's going to be good. But a lot of people don't do that. So I feel like as a fan, your first initial reaction of going to a racetrack is going to be to watch the leaders, because you don't really know any better, I guess.
And then when you, have you been in a situation where maybe you showed up somewhere to announce and you didn't know the drivers, or maybe you didn't know some of the drivers? Is that, is that something where you can do that on the fly, or do you always try to have some level of information before you go in?
It's been a while since I've had to do that, Justin, but more recently, not really, just because it's kind of I'm more routinized now. I know what's coming. But I'll say back when I was in college there, summer 2009 and 10, when I was really literally announcing anything I could get my hands on, whether it was a modified race on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it didn't matter, modified sprint cars, I would announce it, because I just wanted to be at the racetrack and wanted to grow. There were a couple nights where it was like, okay, yeah, I got there, and I didn't know a ton about the drivers in the field, because at that point it wasn't as easy to find information. Information wasn't as readily accessible. Back then it was accessible, but just we're lucky now that it's so accessible through social media, and there's so many different channels you can go down. Back then not a lot of guys had driver websites either. So, but really the last 5 years it hasn't been. I will say that really the last time I kind of went into an event where I could think of where I was overwhelmed before I got there would have been DIRTRACKR Nationals 2014, I think was my first one, when World Racing Group brought me down to announce the modifieds. And that was back when they were getting like 90 modifieds. It was, whoa, I know 15 of these guys, maybe at most. And I grew up in modified racing, so that was a little overwhelming. But it's a challenge you embrace.
Yeah, and I kind of something maybe for more advanced people, like, as you're watching, obviously, you've got notes and things like that in front of you, but the race itself is going to give you quite a bit of information, and I'm curious how you watch for like guys kind of changing lanes, and how the racetrack is changing, and then certain things, like with sprint cars, for example, like if somebody's got their their wing moved around, or if there's any visual cues, how do you kind of spot that stuff from where you're sitting?
I'll say, to say for lane changing, I guess since that was your first one, I usually try to watch the cars in second, third, fourth, because I feel like those are going to be the guys a lot of the time. They're going to be hunting around the racetrack to try to find something, where the leader's not going to be as prone to moving around the racetrack, because they're obviously leading. So what they're doing is working. But a guy in second, third, fourth, some of those times they're not going to want to sit there and ride around in second. They're going to be hunting around the racetrack. Moving a wing back, I think I see that more in Ohio, and I'm more, I think, adjusted to looking for that, where not so I didn't see it a whole ton, and you're a little bit so far removed. And I'm maybe not the best at indicating a wing being back, because I don't really, I guess, it's not something I look for a ton, so I don't mention it a whole ton, just occasionally. But really the lines, you can watch through the middle of the front part of the field to see guys moving around.
Is that something too, like, for example, like with the midgets where they've got, the knobs where they can adjust shocks? Like, is that something you can see, from up there if maybe somebody's rolling around under caution, spinning those around?
No, not real. I guess for me, I've never looked for it. I guess I just assume the guys that it's pretty much everyone but the leader is going to be adjusting shocks, because in USAC you can do that. They've got the adjustments in the car where we don't have that in wing sprint cars. We just have move the wing around and you've got what you've got. But USAC has that option where it kind of puts it in the driver's hands. And I think that benefits the smart drivers because they know how to tune their car to get their shocks where they need to be. But I don't think it's something I guess I've ever really looked for. And part of that is we're on the outside, so you can't really see their hands the best because you have the right side of the car protecting their hands, where if you're on the infield, say you're a photographer, you can maybe see that a little bit better because you've got a better view into the cockpit and can see what they're doing with their hands.
Yeah. Just last question, if somebody's sitting in the stands, what do you think are the must-haves? Like, is timing and scoring a must-have? Is, the night's program a must-have? Like, what's something you think would benefit somebody sitting in the stands to really kind of help keep up with the action through the night?
Must-haves, first-time fan, I would say
not even first-time fan. I mean, any fan, really.
Just someone new. Okay, so I would say before 10 years ago, I would say the program would have been a must-have. I mean, that's how you're going to learn who's in the field. But now, as you mentioned, we've got live timing and scoring. I would say that's your must-have just because 99.9% of the time on live timing and scoring, it's going to have the car number and the name right there so you can see it readily accessible, where a lot of the times the programs don't have the entry list, or maybe they have an expected entry list per se, but it's not going to have all the cars in there, so it's going to have some riffraff in there you don't need. But with live timing and scoring, it's going to tell you who's on the racetrack, where they're running right away. So you can pair numbers with names and schemes right now. Bang, bang, bang. You can say, oh, shoot, Donnie Schatz is in third right now. What's the third car on the racetrack? Oh, there he is. That's what his car looks like. So I feel like live timing and scoring is pretty important if you're a fan in the grandstands and you don't maybe know the drivers the best.
Cool.
And that's one thing I think I've adjusted to myself. I have watched live timing a little bit more when I'm at the racetrack, especially if it's a place where I'm new to per se, and I know I'm going to need some of those drivers. Live timing and scoring is nice because I can immediately pair up who's who right away rather than having to ask.
Is that something too where you're maybe keeping an eye to see like if somebody's moving up, or if maybe it's a battle like further back that you're not paying attention to, but you see somebody maybe make a pass or two? Is that something that timing and scoring can kind of key you into?
Absolutely. And really, when we go to yellow, I kind of have a process of how I go through things. I'll fire off our tweet of what happened. I'll go through the rundown, and then immediately I'll pull out my lineup and kind of cross-reference it through the field to see, like, if I've got 30 seconds, can I find somebody that's maybe moved up a couple of spots or more than a couple of spots that I can mention to the fans, like, hey, Jack Hoddenfield's passed 9 cars in the first 4 laps. Even though he's in 11th right now, you're going to want to keep an eye on him because obviously he's got something he found out there.
Well, thanks to Blake for joining us. I certainly appreciate him taking the time out of his day to talk to us. I think there's a lot of good information in there. Definitely some things I learned as well. Kind of from a guy with a really trained eye and really knows how to watch a race. With him needing to be able to tell fans and convey to fans, what's going on and where to watch on the racetrack. I think there's some good information in there. So definitely appreciate Blake's time. Hopefully you got a little something out of that. Maybe make you a little bit better race fan and have a little more fun and understand things a little bit more the next time you go to the racetrack. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. You can find DIRTRACKR Daily on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or where you get podcasts. Please subscribe, leave me a review, tell your friends. You can also watch the show daily on YouTube and Facebook. You can email me at info@dirtracker.com. You can also follow along at facebook.com/dirttracker, twitter.com/dirttracker, and the website itself, dirttracker.com. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Justin_Fiedler. And you can sign up for the DIRTRACKR weekly newsletter on the site. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow on DIRTRACKR Daily.